Hello, Rick. How are you?
I'm well, Nizam. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine too. And finally, I got opportunity to interview you.
It took a while, but we got there, mate.
Yes, it was worth waiting. And thank you once again. So, friends, we have one of the pioneers in the field of hypnosis, Rick Collingwood. He's one of the world's premier clinical therapeutic hypnotist. He's an internationally renowned hypnosis trainer, author, counselor, public speaker, sales motivator, corporate speaker, and the founder of Mind Motivations and the Australian Academy of Hypnosis and Hypno University. So, let's know more about Rick in his own words. Rick, how did this hypnosis bug bit you?
Well, I actually, many years ago, about 35 years ago, I went to a psychologist to have some hypnosis. I thought I would try it. And I remember being in this deep trance state on this island that he sent me to. And I thought to myself at the time, I've got a better voice than this guy, so I'm going to learn how to do this. And at the time I managed, I was a state manager for a large car manufacturing company here in Australia, and I wanted to change careers anyway. So I went off and learned counselling, which is what my intention was to do, be a motivational speaker and a counsellor. And after I experienced the hypnosis, I basically thought I'm going to learn this. So I went off to an Ericksonian hypnosis training course I thought I was going to learn to walk up to people and go, look at me, sleep, whatever. And so I went to this training course and I spent 10 days there and really just got confused. And I remember walking out saying to one of the students, this is 35 years ago, when I teach this, I'm going to teach it properly. And I thought, oh, where did that come from? And from there, I just pursued other trainings and actually learned how to do hypnosis instead of trying to be a genius psychiatrist. So, yeah, that's where it all came from. And then it was just a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess. But since that time, I've been all over the world with it. I've done a lot of study, obviously a lot of training, worked in Hollywood for 2 years with various movie stars, came back here, and then I got into magnetism and mesmerism. I went back to Europe and learned that. So now most of the clinical work that I do with people in front of me is more magnetism than hypnotism. Unfortunately, it's very misunderstood and people just think there's this guy Mesmer that wandered around with magnets, but it's a little bit more in depth than that, and there's some good science behind it now. So I use a combination of the two and it seems to be very successful.
So could you please elaborate a bit about magnetism? What exactly do you do? So it is like just magnets across the room, and so many confusions and misconceptions around it.
Yeah,
So
look, it has nothing to do with any kind of a magnet that you would buy in a hardware store. Well, what it is, that a verbal induction is the doorway into hypnotism. Hypnotic fascination, like animals do constantly in nature, look into my eyes. Fascination is the doorway into magnetism. And then it involves touching certain enteric points on the body, just tapping them, and what we call strokes or passes. What's really happening, I think, is that the electrons between the atoms in people's fields connect. And it's very easy to transfer a feeling into somebody or to relax their nervous system. It's got nothing to do with putting thoughts in people's heads. And of course, the new age profession has taken it way off in the wrong direction. And when you look at the side, like there was a doctor, Colin Ross, 8 years ago, that worked with the MK Ultra mind control programs. He's a psychiatrist, and he proved there is a ray that comes out of the eye. But it just carried light. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our brain. Our eyes just transmit and receive light, which carries information. But information is not thought, it's feeling. And when you work with this enough, from the enteric brain down in the stomach, it hooks to this brain up here via the vagus nerve. And there's certain practices, of course, that you have to do to become proficient at it. And you have to get over yourself as well when you start seeing results and look for other reasons apart from the magnetism. But, after 28 years as a hypnotherapist, if magnetism was nonsense, I wouldn't have bothered with it. But it's not nonsense, but it's like all things. If you want to be good at it, you have to have a passion for it, and you have to practice it and practice it. And then it becomes second nature. It's always there in the therapeutic context anyway, because when you're sitting with a client, you have a connection, but it's electromagnetic. It's not psychological. So it's completely different than hypnotism. Hypnotism to magnetism is the same as night is to day. They're totally different. And magnetism is very good for psychosomatic conditions, whereas hypnotism is very good for improving memory, enhancing your skills faster, and dealing with psychological issues. So the two are quite completely different.
Wonderful. And is it effective as well in the online sessions as well, right? Because it includes touching, you said magnetism.
No, it's not as effective. Hypnotism is far better online. Magnetism is very good in situ, although it can be done by getting a photo of a client and doing distance healing by gazing at it, because the connectedness is always there. But for magnetism, you're far better off to be with the person right there in front of you. Yeah.
And what kind of trainings do you conduct? Do you train people to become proficient in the magnetism as well, right?
Yeah, I have a diploma. I call it energetic hypnosis. If we call it mesmerism, immediately there's like a curse on that name. So, but energetic hypnosis is quite fine. But look, where it came from, before Mesmer's time, there was magnetists. It was very, very common. And then Mesmer came along and he put it into a unified theory, which was not completely correct. And it adapted this name, mesmerism. Some people will say to me it's similar to Reiki. And I will jokingly say the only reason the Japanese called it Reiki is because they couldn't say mesmerism properly. But all of these so-called energy treatments all have similarities, but what people fail to understand, it's not an energy that jumps from one person to the next. It's a connection that's always there. To be a good magnetist, you just need to know how to tune into it. And when you can do that, you get feeling impression from people. And the exercises that you do to learn magnetism, they really switch your intuition on. But only up till the present. If you have an intuition that you just got the lotto numbers, you're deluding yourself. It's got nothing to do with that. It's learning to listen to your own enteric brain, which is a lot of very good science on that now at heartmath.com and what have you. So unfortunately, well, for me, if I could turn the hands of time back, or if I had some sort of a control on what hypnotists need to learn, I would start with the magnetism. It's easy and it's pure and it's clear, whereas hypnotism, you can confuse yourself for years on trying to figure out what the best induction is. And as I tell my students, the hypnotist is inside of you. My job is to bring it out and to give you so much information that you take from it what you feel will work for you. It saddens me online now. You see all these courses of perfect deep inductions, and most of the time it's nonsense. There's no such thing as the perfect induction. We've been trying to figure this out for 2,000 years and nobody has. So with magnetism, at one of my websites and in my resource center, I had a trainer came down from the US, Tom Silver, with scientific hypnosis, and he puts people on EEGs and watches the brain state. And I don't sit in the trainings that I quite often bring a trainer to Australia, well, before COVID, but I never sit in there. And Tom wasn't that, what's the right word, believing in magnetism. So on the second day, I'm in my office and he went, well, come on, Mesmer, come and do your stuff. And I said, what? And he hooked me up to an EEG. And I flattened my brain state in about maybe 2 minutes. And then he came up and he's poking me and clapping next to, and there was no reaction whatsoever. So he was a bit bemused by that. So he waited 3 days and he got this one of the students with the most hyperactive brain in the whole class who couldn't calm his mind. And he hooked this guy up and he said to me, now do it to him. And you can see it all on video. It took about 5 minutes and this guy eventually is just registering no brain state. So anyone can do this. It's not magical. It's not mystical. It's just something we never got taught in school. And unfortunately, most hypnotists and trainers have read a little bit of stuff about Mesmer that says he was a charlatan and a con man, and they've left it at that and they haven't dug any deeper. So when you know both, you become quite an exceptional therapist, because as well as dealing with the psychological issues of a person's challenge, you're also dealing with the psychosomatic connection as well. So one of Mesmer's favorite sayings was, he dealt with a lot of ladies, of course, back in, "Madam, your nerves are blocked." And when you bring that into a modern context, we've got 12,000 kilometers of fine nerves in the body. The heart beats and makes electricity. It goes through the nervous system. If you have angst at the time and you keep feeling that way, then a little nerve up here might jam. Then you get a sore neck or the lower back. Or so magnetism is very, very good for pains of unknown etiology, migraine headaches, things that doctors have researched and with the patient, but have no answer except another prescription. And there's nothing wrong with prescriptions, but this sort of seems to be able to get down into the hard drive and make a good shift, you know?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And please tell me, why do you plan to retire, Rick? Because a lot of people need your trainings and all that.
Well, look, the truth is, I will semi-retire. I was talking to Matt Gilbert in the UK the other night. He wants me to go over there and train magnetism, which I intend to do at the end of the year. But he was saying we never retire. And we don't. I've done this before, tried to retire, and I last about a month, and then I'm climbing the walls. Do you know what I mean? My idea was to retire in Asia about a year ago. Then COVID came along. So I'd been living in Thailand, and I went to work for the Russian government for a month, went back to Thailand and intended to then come back to Australia, go back to Thailand, then the US. And then one day, 2 days before I'm due to fly out, they just shut the airport down, and that was it, not going anywhere. So I decided to pay a year's rent in my academy and watch Netflix for a year. But this thing just dragged on and on and on. And now finally they've got control of it and we can fly again soon. But I'll never properly retire, mate. I'll always be, because of the internet, I won't be able to help myself. I know, they say you need to know yourself. I know how quickly I get bored, but I'm certainly looking forward in a way to not having consistent trainings every couple of months in Australia and just flying in and flying out when I want to do them, instead of being there every day. Yeah. So that's the reality behind that.
And if you have to give advice to hypnotherapists and coaches about magnetism, what would that be? Like exploring magnetism.
Go find some old books. There's plenty of them available on Google. You can read James Braid's book where he said he admits spending 10 days with La Fontaine, the magnetist, and he was terrified of what had happened from the medical association, especially with Mesmer and what have you. So he went to see La Fontaine at a show in Manchester to disprove him. He went home and tried what he had seen La Fontaine do, and it worked. So he contacted him and he spent 10 days with La Fontaine. La Fontaine taught him all about magnetism, and all that Braid kept was look into my eyes, and didn't even mention that it was a gaze. He just called it fixation. There was a lot more to it than that. And he said on his deathbed in one of his writings, if only I had have had the professional fortitude to use what La Fontaine had taught me, I would have cured a lot more people, because my verbal method could never achieve the results that the magnetic method could. But I had a medical association to be concerned about. So at the same time, there was another doctor, James Esdale from Montrose in Scotland, and he went to India and worked in a hospital, and he read Mesmer's little 55-page book, and he just got on with it. And he did 155 documented limb amputations that, when you read some of them, sound horrendous. But back in that day, there was nothing else they could do. But, you know, if I was going for a limb amputation, I'd be saying, bring the anaesthetist here. I wouldn't be trying to do mesmerism. But when you looked at what these people could achieve, you know, a common sense mind will go, there must have been more to this than the writings after post-mesmer, that it was all folly, because it's not. You look at, all we're doing with it is using the same brain that will make ants go under the house 2 days before it rains. It makes ducks fly north or south in August. It's the same connection that makes a million little fish all go like that in the ocean, or birds in the sky. It's not a logical, conscious flow of connection. It's just there all the time. And it's very, very misunderstood. And the New Age industry has done a fantastic job of turning it into all this spooky nonsense. So I'll tell you what, you have to undo a lot of rocks to find the diamonds and the realities. I researched Mesmer for 12 years, went all over the world looking at his stuff and his writings, and to Meersburg, where his monument is. And that used to be my yearly pilgrimage to Meersburg, but that's all finished now with this Omicron. So we'll see what the future brings, mate.
Wonderful.
But there's a lot of information at anyway, if anyone's interested in this, at hypnouniversity.com. There's some pretty significant courses there that have got hundreds of hours of filmed and class DVDs, and massive amounts of information in the correct books and what have you. So, you know, anybody that wants to know about it, they can get 15 years of my benefit of sifting through the rubble to find the reality. And the hypnotists that still think it's all nonsense, that's fine too. I'm sure they do a great job with what they do, each to their own. I've always held, regardless of what modality you're using, it's inside of you. You just need to find a good teacher to bring it out.
Yes.
It's like, I was an Ericksonian hypnotist for 3 years, staunchly Ericksonian. I think I got some pretty good results. But people forget that Erickson was a psychiatrist. He had massive amounts of training. Everything he did that brought a shift, he always called it hypnotism. But he could write out prescriptions. He could get patients to do things legally that we would go to jail for, because he was a psychiatrist. And when you read his book, Phoenix, he said in there, what was amazing to him was, in 20 years of training doctors, no doctor ever realized that he always answered a question with another question. But what was more amazing is no medical student ever asked him what a hypnotic induction was. So with Ericksonianism, what we have is all these Ericksonian experts who are trying to teach something that they think somebody might have meant 40 years ago before he passed away. So doesn't mean his stuff doesn't work, but I've got to say the word bloody. It's bloody difficult to be a good Ericksonian and follow all those word patterns in the NLP. And there's easier ways. That's what I think anyway.
Thank you very much, Rick. It was wonderful talking to you. And I hope at least some people now get to know this. There is a misconception about mesmerism and magnetism. And I'll make sure to provide your Hypno University details, everything, that if anyone would like to get trained, all the URL is available in the YouTube description.
And anybody's welcome to contact me
Yeah,
regardless. Yep, that's fantastic.
wonderful. Thank
Well,
you very much, Rick.
thank you for the opportunity. It's much appreciated.
Finally, I'm very happy that I could talk to you. Thank you very
We
much.
we did it.
Yes.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, Rick. Bye.
Bye bye.